Friend died in 2003, but now he's alive. I've always been a rational person, grounded in reality and explanations. But what I'm about to share has shaken me to my core, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about the world and reality itself. This is my story, and I swear every word of it is true. Back in 2003, I received devastating news that a close school friend of mine, let's call him Mark, had tragically passed away. The news came from a mutual acquaintance, a friend of Mark's girlfriend, Sarah. She told me that Mark had died in his sleep at the tender age of 23. It was shocking and bewildering. I remember my first thought was whether substances were involved. I asked, but she assured me that there were no drugs, no foul play, just a sudden, inexplicable death. The news hit Sarah particularly hard. They had just gotten engaged. It was a nightmare scenario, losing her fiancé so unexpectedly. I wanted to reach out and offer my condolences, but I never did. I couldn't find the right words, and honestly, I was too distraught myself. Years passed, but the memory of Mark's death lingered in my mind. A few years after his supposed death, I ran into a mutual friend, John. We talked about Mark, and the conversation was somber, heavy with unspoken grief. John and I both felt the weight of the loss, and I got the distinct impression that it was still a sensitive topic for everyone who had known Mark. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, life was moving on, as it does, and I was busy with my own affairs. Then, out of the blue, I received a friend request on Facebook. It was from Mark. My heart skipped a beat. My first thought was that it must be a cruel joke or maybe a hacker. I ignored the request, unable to process what I was seeing. But today, everything changed. I was scrolling through social media and stumbled upon a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Mark and Sarah celebrating their anniversary. My mind raced. How could this be possible? Mark was dead. I knew he was dead. I had mourned him. I had talked about his death with John. Yet, here he was, very much alive and seemingly happy. I couldn't shake the feeling of utter confusion and disbelief, so I reached out to John. I needed to know if I was losing my mind. I asked him to recall the conversation we had about Mark's death. To my utter bewilderment, John looked at me like I was insane. He had no recollection of such a conversation and insisted that Mark had never died. According to him, Mark had been alive and well, living his life, getting married, and starting a family. Now I'm left grappling with this impossible reality. How could I remember something so vividly, something that apparently never happened? Was it a glitch in the Matrix, a parallel universe bleeding into our own, or am I just losing my grip on reality? I don't have any answers, only questions that haunt me. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? Please, if you have, share your story. I need to know I'm not alone in this bewildering, chilling experience. Update. First, I want to thank everyone for their overwhelming support and the flood of responses to my initial post. Reading through your comments and messages has been both comforting and unsettling. Many of you shared your own experiences of inexplicable events and glitches in the Matrix, and it helps to know I'm not alone in facing something so surreal. Since my last post, I've been trying to make sense of this bizarre situation. Here's what I've found out and what's happened since. After the initial shock, I decided to reach out to Mark directly. I sent him a message on Facebook, simply asking if he remembered me. He responded almost immediately, saying he did and that he had been trying to reconnect with old friends. His tone was friendly, completely normal. It was unnerving, to say the least, to have a casual conversation with someone I vividly remembered being dead. I mustered up the courage to ask if we could meet. He agreed, and we set up a time to catch up over coffee. As the meeting approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. Would seeing him in person provide some answers, or just deepen the mystery? Dotage trek when I walked into the cafe and saw him sitting there, alive and well. It was like stepping into an alternate reality. We talked for hours, reminiscing about old times, catching up on life. I couldn't bring myself to ask him about his supposed death. I was afraid of what I might hear or not hear. I also met Sarah briefly. She was as lovely and kind as I remembered. There was no hint of the immense grief I had once seen in her eyes. They seemed genuinely happy together, completely unaware of the turmoil their existence was causing me. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I reached out to John again. This time, I pressed harder about our past conversations. He started getting irritated, insisting that I was misremembering. But I could see it in his eyes. There was a flicker of doubt, a crack in his certainty. I've also been digging through old messages and emails, trying to find any record of Mark's death. So far, I've come up empty-handed. It's like that period of my life has been wiped clean of any mention of his passing. I've considered hypnosis or regression therapy, anything that might unlock the truth from my memory. One night, I had a dream, or perhaps it was a memory of attending Mark's funeral. I remember standing by his graveside, the feeling of loss and disbelief. But when I woke up, I couldn't distinguish if it was real or just my mind playing tricks on me. Some of you suggested the possibility of a parallel universe or alternate timeline, and while that sounds far-fetched, it's starting to seem like the only plausible explanation. How else could I have such a clear, consistent memory of something that apparently never happened? I'm continuing my search for answers, and I'll keep you all updated as I uncover more. If anyone has any advice, resources, or similar experiences, please share. This has been the most disorienting experience of my life, and I need all the help I can get to make sense of it. Thank you again for your support. This community has been a lifeline during this incredibly confusing time. Update 2. It's been a few months since my last update, and I've experienced a whirlwind of emotions and discoveries. I'm writing this final update to share what I've found and to bring some closure to this bizarre chapter of my life. After my previous post, many of you suggested that I try to gather more concrete evidence, photos, documents, anything that might provide a clue about what really happened. I took your advice to heart and delved deeper into my past. I started by contacting old classmates and mutual friends who had known Mark. Their reactions varied. Some remembered the grief and shock of his sudden death, while others seemed genuinely confused by my inquiries, insisting that he had never died. The conflicting memories were both comforting and distressing, further blurring the line between reality and whatever this glitch was. Determined to find a definitive answer, I decided to visit Mark's hometown. I went to the local library and sifted through old newspapers from 2003, hoping to find an obituary or any mention of his death. There was nothing. It was as if the event had been erased from history. Feeling increasingly desperate, I reached out to a professional hypnotist. I hoped that hypnosis might unlock repressed memories or provide some insight into my seemingly false memories. During the session, I relived the funeral vividly, standing by the graveside, seeing the casket, feeling the crushing sorrow. But when I awoke, the hypnotist suggested that my mind could have created these memories to cope with some other unresolved trauma. One night, I received a late call from John. His voice was shaky. He sounded as if he had seen a ghost. He admitted that after our last conversation, he started having vivid dreams about Mark's funeral, just as I had. He even described details that matched my own memories. This was the turning point that convinced me there was more to this than just faulty recollections. A breakthrough came when I discovered an old yearbook in my parents' attic. Flipping through its pages, I found a dedication section for students who had passed away. Mark's name was there with a heartfelt message from Sarah. It was undeniable proof that at one point, Mark was considered deceased by those who knew him. With this in hand, I confronted Mark. I brought the yearbook and carefully asked him about the dedication. His face went pale as he read it. He admitted that he had no memory of ever being dead or anything that could explain the dedication. He agreed to meet with Sarah and John to discuss it further. The meeting was surreal. As we pieced together our fragmented memories, it became clear that something unexplainable had occurred. Sarah revealed that she had kept a journal during their engagement. When she checked the entries from 2003, she found several pages describing her grief over Mark's death. She had written about the funeral, her feelings of loss, and even conversations with friends offering condolences. Yet, here they were, together and alive. We've come to accept that there are some things beyond our understanding, phenomena that defy the laws of reality as we know them. Whether it was a glitch in the Matrix, a shift between parallel universes, or some other inexplicable event, we may never know for certain. This experience has profoundly changed me. It has made me more open to the mysteries of the universe, more appreciative of the people in my life, and more willing to question the nature of reality. I've found some peace in knowing that others have faced similar experiences and that we're not alone in these strange encounters. Thank you to everyone who followed this journey, offered support, and shared their own stories. This community has been a source of strength and understanding through it all. While I may never have all the answers, I've found a measure of acceptance and closure. Some mysteries, it seems, are meant to remain unsolved.